The hum of the aircraft filled the quiet cabin, steady and low, like the heartbeat of something enormous yet fragile. Business class passengers spoke in murmurs, screens flickered, and the air smelled faintly of citrus and coffee. But at seat 3A, there was silence, heavy, unmoving silence. The boy couldn't have been older than 10. Dressed in a charcoal suit 2 sizes too formal for him, he sat stiffly beside a man who didn't look like he knew how to smile. His small hands rested on his lap, perfectly still, while his gaze was fixed out the window, watching clouds roll past in a blur of light and shadow. The man next to him, the billionaire, scrolled through his tablet, his jaw tight, his eyes red from exhaustion or grief, maybe both. Every few minutes, he'd glance at his son as if expecting him to say something, but the boy never did. Not a word since the funeral, not a whisper since his mother's casket had been lowered into the ground. The flight attendant, Amelia, noticed the moment they boarded. She'd been with the airline for 8 years, long enough to read the quiet between people. The father's shoulders carried power. The boy's silence carried pain. She didn't need the whispers from other crew members to know who they were. The headlines had been everywhere. Billionaire mogul Daniel Harrington loses wife in tragic accident. The photo of the little boy clutching a teddy bear had broken half the internet. Amelia had seen grief before. But this felt different. The child's silence wasn't rebellion. It was retreat, a quiet place he'd locked himself in, far from the noise of a world that expected him to move on. As she moved down the aisle, checking seatbelts and smiles, her eyes returned to him. He hadn't touched his juice. He hadn't blinked in a while either. Just that same stillness, like a statue carved out of sorrow. When the seatbelt sign dimmed, Amelia crouched down beside him. "Hi there," she said softly, voice careful not to startle. "Would you like anything to drink? Or maybe some apple juice?" No response. Just those wide, distant eyes. She smiled anyway, the kind of smile meant to comfort, not convince. "You know," she whispered, "when I was your age, I used to press my hand against the window to see if I could touch the sky." The boy's fingers twitched slightly. "Almost invisible." Amelia leaned closer, her tone almost a secret. "The sky always felt closer when I tried. Would you like to try too?" He didn't move, but his eyes flickered just for a second. The billionaire turned sharply, his tone polite but final. "He doesn't talk," he said. "Please just leave him be." Amelia straightened. "Of course, sir." Her voice was steady, but her heart ached. She nodded and walked back down the aisle, but she couldn't shake the image of the boy's stillness. There was something too familiar about it. When she reached the galley, she pulled out her small notebook, the one she always carried. Inside were notes from flights, doodles from kids she'd met, even a few messages written in crayon. She flipped to a blank page and wrote, "Sometimes clouds look sad too, but they still move." She tore the page gently and folded it. On her next round, she stopped by 3A again, pretending to adjust the tray table. She slipped the note onto the boy's lap, smiled quietly, and walked away. Minutes passed. Then, as she handed out drinks to another passenger, she saw the boy's tiny fingers unfolding the paper. He stared at the words for a long time. Then his hand went to the window, slowly pressing against the glass, tracing the line of the horizon. Amelia's throat tightened. The father looked over, confused. "What's that?" he asked. The boy didn't answer, but he didn't look away from the sky either. When Amelia passed again, the note was gone. She thought nothing more of it until later, when she came by with dinner service. There, on the edge of the tray, was her note, folded back into a square, with new words scrawled underneath in a child's uneven handwriting. "Do clouds go where the sun goes?" Amelia froze, her eyes glistening. It wasn't a sentence of small talk. It was the first sentence he had written to anyone in weeks. She knelt again softly. Yes, she whispered. They always find their way back to the light. The boy looked at her, then really looked, and something cracked open between the two silences. His father's gaze softened. For the first time on that long flight, the billionaire leaned back, eyes glassy, watching his son whisper something under his breath. It wasn't much, just a single word, but to him, it was everything. Amelia stayed near the galley for a while, her heart still fluttering with the soft tremor of what just happened. It wasn't every day that silence broke, not like that. She'd seen passengers cry, laugh, shout, even fall in love mid her. But this was something sacred. When she returned to their row, the cabin lights had dimmed to a soft amber glow. The boy was still watching the sky, his reflection floating in the window like a ghost from another time. His father sat beside him, his hand now resting gently over his son's. The distance between them wasn't gone, but it had changed like a door that had quietly opened. "Would you like some hot chocolate?" Amelia asked, her tone featherlight. The boy hesitated, then nodded. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was yes. When she brought the drink, she placed it carefully on the tray and smiled. "It's not too hot," she whispered. "Just warm enough to hold." He wrapped both hands around the cup, letting the steam rise against his face. She noticed the tremble in his fingers, the way he inhaled as if warmth itself could fill the spaces grief had hollowed out. His father cleared his throat. "He used to love hot chocolate," he said quietly. "His mother made it every night before bed." Amelia's eyes softened.
Thank you.
"Then maybe she's here in this cup," she said, a little bit of warmth she left behind. For a moment, the man couldn't speak. The boy looked up, eyes shimmering, and whispered, barely audible, "She made it with cinnamon." The words hung in the air, fragile as breath. The billionaire's composure broke. His hand reached out, trembling, and covered his son's. "I know," he managed. "I remember." The boy leaned against him, silent again, but this time it wasn't the silence of loss. It was peace, the kind that fills the spaces where pain once lived. When the plane began its descent, Amelia walked by one last time. The boy was asleep, his head on his father's shoulder, the empty cup of hot chocolate resting beside him. The man looked up at her, eyes glistening. "Thank you," he whispered. She smiled softly. "He did all the work?" she said. As passengers disembarked, Amelia found something tucked into the seat pocket. A small folded napkin with a child's handwriting scrawled across it. "Thank you for helping the clouds move again." She pressed it to her chest, eyes stinging. Outside, the sky had turned a pale gold, sunlight spilling over the runway like forgiveness. And as the plane emptied, Amelia whispered to no one in particular, "Sometimes all a person needs is someone who listens to their silence."